Hey girly, one of the hardest parts of breaking generational cycles as a mom is realizing that sometimes we're going to react in ways that we promised ourselves we would never react. And when that happens, that guilt, that guilt eats at you. So when we had our son, the first thing I wanted to do in this parenting journey was I wanted to make sure that I gave my children way better than my parents ever gave to me. But unfortunately, there have been many times where I have reacted in similar ways that my parents did to me. And because knowing the damage that my childhood had on myself as an adult, I did everything in my power and decided to go to therapy. Started reading self-help books, trying to get all the information I needed to heal myself from my childhood wounds. And the more I started doing therapy, the more I realized, holy shit, I have so much work to do. Where do I even start? And because of that, I wanted to do everything in my power to not create such a traumatic childhood for my son and for my daughter now. So I tried everything. I tried to remind myself to stay calm in situations that were very difficult. But reality is, I had been doing so much of these behaviors since I was little. And all the things that I learned growing up, I was doing. And the more that I would react, the more I started shaming myself and started telling myself that maybe I wasn't going to be the one breaking the cycle. Maybe I was going to repeat the same thing. But I didn't want to think that way. I want to do everything in my power to change this because it's not right to have to be 38 years old and still trying to heal from childhood wounds. I don't want them to go through that. I don't want them to have to go to therapy constantly and feel like shit about themselves because I messed them up. I don't want that for them. So as my kids started getting older, I started realizing that the more responsibility I had, the more overwhelmed I got. I would notice that when I had to juggle home tasks, or I was also going to school at the time, still am going to school. It was just a lot. Then the fact that I was trying my hardest to be perfect so I wouldn't mess up my kids' childhood, I put a lot of pressure on myself. That in the end of the day, all that pressure, I snapped. And the more I started noticing that no matter what I did, I would still react. And it could be something so little of my kids arguing or my kids like yelling or stimming. It was just so overwhelming. When my kids were younger and they would cry, I had just got out of the military. I was transitioning to go into civilian world, and the pressure of not knowing what I was going to do in my life. And now I have 2 kids, and now I'm responsible for these 2 children. The pressure was on. And when they would cry, I would tense up. I would feel like, oh my gosh, like I'm the one that has to take care of them. I need to control my emotions. And I would just leave it inside me and I would tense up and then I would snap. After I would snap, I started spiraling. My thoughts would get really negative. I would shame myself and I would pretty much define my mistake as my identity. The more I did that, the more I hated myself. And I started hating myself because I promised myself I would never be like them. I would never be like my parents. So I was scared. I was scared of repeating the same thing and that I was going to ruin my children because of it. And when you're trying to break the cycle, the pressure is huge. So any mistake that you make, you can make it even bigger because you're trying to do something that not even your parents could do. But the more I went to therapy, the more I started, working on myself and healing a lot of my childhood trauma, I started realizing that, yes, breaking the cycle is going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. But breaking cycles isn't about never making a mistake. Actually, the more I made mistakes, the more I realized what I needed to work on the most. And so I started identifying what was overwhelming me and when I needed to take breaks before I would react. And you know what I learned more from all of it? Was that even though I made those mistakes, I could repair. And that's something that I never had. And so going and being vulnerable and apologizing to my children so they knew that it was not their fault that I reacted in that way, that I am in control of my emotions. And I'm still learning from all the past experiences that I had. I'm still learning how to regulate and identify my emotions. I started noticing my triggers. I started learning how to calm my body. And I learned from each situation. And the best thing is, the more I did that, the easier it got. And after I repair and I talk to my children, I realized, you know what? It's not about being perfect. They don't need perfect. They need to know that when we make mistakes, we go and we apologize and we take responsibility for our mistakes. That shows them a bigger lesson. So if we can identify that and identify that, yes, I made a mistake, but I'm also learning from the mistake. That's growth. The more we do that, the more we start growing into the mom that we want to become. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a badass mom, okay? I want to be a mom that my kids come to me when they're adults and feel supported and loved and want to be around me. I want to be a mom that provides safety for her children and understanding. So healing while parenting, it's not easy. But every time you choose to grow, you're creating something different for your kids, something that you probably didn't have. So just know, yes, we do tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves because we're trying to break generational cycles. But also know that if we make a mistake, it doesn't define who we are. And we can grow from them and we can learn. If you're a mom healing while raising your kids and trying to break generational cycles, subscribe and join our community because we're learning and growing together.